Right. Hey guys. So this is my coach Jaeger. He is my powerlifting sensei. I've been working with him for 1 year. Our 1 year anniversary is actually today, I believe. Is it the 26th? Yeah, this is our 1 year anniversary from when he sent me
Oh, we
my first
celebrate.
program. I still have that first program. Um,
Hanging on the wall.
yeah, it is right there. I'm not going to show it because I have a shrine to Jagger. You guys can't see. He is well known for his he could ties up his hair in this bun when he deadlifts and it grants him magical powers.
Power spread.
Right. But a little bit about Jagger. So he has his bachelor's degree in exercise physiology from the University of Central Missouri. He had an experience, was it for 1 summer, with Juggernaut Training System, where he interned under Chad Wesley Smith, who is one of the best powerlifting um, coaches slash what would you call him? It's just sensei, like
Just
Boris Scheitel level
yeah.
geniuses. He has experience of doing jujitsu, Scientific Training Association. Don't you have your college strength and conditioning, your NCSM or something?
I
Or
don't. No, I don't.
no, okay, well, he has
PSCS and all
he has,
that.
he has books,
About it.
Ancho books. Okay, and then he coached several uh, powerlifters to national championships, international elite and elite powerlifters, world record holders, national record holders, and state record holders. It has 4 years of coaching experience. Has lived with Jared Feather for 2 semesters in college, who is the head prep consultant. Shout out Jared. Uh, Dude's looking insane right now. 230 with like lean, striated, like scary. And he's also once ate 72 pieces of sushi in one sitting, which he says he's not sure if he should be proud of or not.
Some people have done better, but at the time it was a big feat.
We're very proud. Yeah, do you have anything else that you like to add about yourself?
I mean, that sums it up as far as my qualifications and experiences go. I myself been powerlifting for many years. National champ 1 year, silver medalist another year. I mean, talk the talk, walk the walk. So been there, done that.
So I guess I think it's always kind of interesting to see why somebody started doing powerlifting and whatnot. So for Jagger, what got you into powerlifting?
Well, in college, I first heard about powerlifting, and my buddy Logan signed up for a meet, and I showed up just to watch him. And then, like, the meet director needed some people to do some like loading, and so I helped with that, and I just felt like I was part of it, and it was a lot of fun. But like going to college with Jared and then a bunch of my other friends, they're all bodybuilders, and I just never was really interested in bodybuilding. And then they did the powerlifting meet, and I signed up for one shortly after that. I just jumped right in, did it, and it was a great time. Started taking it real serious, and then I just felt like I was able to compete in something as well. Like my other friends were also competing, like bodybuilding, so I felt included in some way, working for something, having a goal.
Did you
So
have
that's
an
kind of
athletic
fun.
background growing up?
No, like powerlifting. I wrestled in high school, and that's kind of when I first started, lifting weights with intention of getting strong and jacked and scary looking. So
Emphasis on scary.
yeah, the real scary, weighing 160 pounds, being 6 foot tall.
Oh man, going
Real
off of that, that's actually a good segue. So something that you hear a lot is that you need to have a strength base or something, and with lots of strength coaches, um, and I think that that is a, that's good advice and it's also bad advice, because as many of my following have heard me say, hypertrophy muscle size is foundational for basically every single characteristic of athleticism. So, Jagger, with that being said, how important is a hypertrophy base for strength? And would you actually, how would you place, if you had a beginning power lifter or somebody who is in their years of training, how much of time should they spend actually getting bigger muscles? And how much time should they spend doing a strength block specifically?
Well, beginners with like little to no experience in, lifting weights, exercising, sports, they should spend a considerable amount of the time building muscle because end of the day the muscle is going to lift the weights. But I mean, I'll give you two answers on the importance of having a lot of muscle mass. So part of me wants to say not that important. It's just not. There's a lot of lifters who are just not really jacked but are strong as shit. And then there's, but then like I also want to say like it's extremely important because the most jacked guys are also strong as shit. So for most people, you want to have a lot of muscle to be strong. But there are those freaks of natures who are, not carrying a lot of muscle mass who are super strong. So I'm going to say you want to have a lot of muscle mass, not only because you'll just increase your potential for strength, but you also look cool as shit doing it. So when I say, your potential for strength, someone who's like 250 pounds and just yoked out of their mind, just tons of muscle
Arcade
mass.
Proctor.
Yeah, like K, just super jacked. Like he has to walk sideways through doors.
Yeah.
Like, and double XL shirt is just tight as shit on his arms. You know, you spend some time just working on strength, like you can just get infinitely strong, it would seem. Or someone who's maybe like 200 pounds, like same height as him, same frame, but 200 pounds. If he just spends time working on strength, probably just not going to be as strong because he just doesn't have as much muscle mass. So he just doesn't have that capacity to lift the heavy weights.
Yeah, I can speak from personal experience. And I know like anecdote isn't like science, but like it still holds a lot of merit, especially with limited evidence. Um, Prior to being coached by Jagger, I spent a lot of my time doing um a lot of strength work, and I did gain weight. I went from like 135 pounds to like 100 like 70, 175. And obviously because I did build out the muscle, it was, I did gain strength. However, I've noticed that for myself as I focus more on hypertrophy, I think that there's more other things that you learn a lot from hypertrophy training that you just won't learn from strength, such as how to alter technique and really focus a little bit more on that for different outcomes, and how um, I guess how important it is, and I guess how your body does respond to different rep ranges and whatnot. Because for my like, kind of like what you said, and we can look at this around the whole entire list. We can look at, there's a lot of guys like a Jagger said that are really strong and that aren't like super muscular like Max Tuning. However, if you look at like all the really good guys in their class, and like the top, the guys that go to worlds, they're all freaking jacked. Like they fill out their weight class. They have to water cut down to get to do their weight because they're just so muscular. Um, so I think that for most power lifters, if you don't spend time actually gaining weight and trying to really take a step back from constantly trying to always hit numbers and take some time to focus on hypertrophy, there are other benefits of that. I know. So just speaking for myself, um, in the past year that Jagger and I have worked together, I think we've done maybe 4 strength mesocycles. The rest of it has mainly just been hypertrophy and like a little peak. Um, so I guess going off of, I guess, because we've kind of talked about splitting it up. Jagger, I know there's a lot of different ways to program, but what would you say is beneficial about phase potentiation and block periodized approaches to powerlifting, as opposed to like a DUP wave loading strategy?
hmm So with block periodization, that's essentially meaning your phases are broken up into several weeks, sometimes months at a time, whereas DUP is it can change like within a session or day to day. And with block periodization, I feel like there's more like it's thinking more long term, and it's focusing on making progress for years to come. Whereas DUP, I could be more of like a peak would be better for like peaking, but using block periodization, that's what I use for like 99% of all my programs. That's essentially just building off of each phase, so hypertrophy phases, and then into strengths, and then into peaks. Some Most of the time, it's like for the off seasons, it's going to be hypertrophy, strength, hypertrophy, doing more hypertrophy than strength, depending on the athlete. But you know, I feel like DUP gets a bad rap, but I don't. I mean, DUP is kind of sexy in the fact that it's like fun because it changes all the time. Whereas block can be monotonous, and you're just doing the same things for months, and that can burn people out. So you got to do what's fun to you. But if you want the best results, I mean, you're gonna like best results for years to come. You're gonna pick that monotonous block periodization, doing the same thing for months, and getting better at that, and then switching it up.
I think a good analogy of why I think block periodization should be applied to powerlifting. Like because I have done the DUP approach. I made gains. I made
Yeah.
gains. It works. However, I made better progress with specific areas when I have focused on that one quality. I think it's similar to an athlete who is playing baseball or football or whatever. That you don't see them, when they're in their actual season, they're not doing a ton of weights, a ton of conditioning. They're doing a lot of really, really specific competition work.
hmm
And the off season is a lot of, okay, let's get bigger, let's get stronger, let's work on our skills, instead of just like game prep and whatnot. And I think it's a similar approach to powerlifting periodization. In particular, has a lot of big benefits in that way. Because I can speak from experience. I think that while you said that it is kind of sexy and like you can kind of do everything like all at once, having the pressure to kind of come in every single week and you're just like, I have to hit this single. It has to be heavier than last time. Hopefully, like the psychological pressure of having to hit a number is huge.
yeah.
And anybody who's competed especially knows that. Like I remember for my third deadlift attempt, I was pretty confident based off of like how well like the first two attempts went, but I was there for like since 8 a.m. I was tired. I wanted to go home. And like I had a lot of pressure because I was like, I know I needed to hit that. And in order for what the elite total that I want. And the psychological fatigue after that lift, like I hit it. And then like basically I was just like for like 2 weeks, I was just dead. And I think that if you come into the gym and you constantly have that mindset of, oh, I have to like always hit these numbers, can be kind of hard. Um, and going off of that, with hypertrophy and strength phases, how would you recommend? Because this is something I get asked a lot. How would you recommend? I guess judging how successful a phase was for hypertrophy versus strength versus a peak? Like, what performance markers would you look for, or
hmm
should you be looking for?
All right. So in hypertrophy, I'm mainly looking at the gain in their body weight or the loss in their body weight. If they're trying to lose weight or gain weight, build muscle or lose fat, I'm looking at the trends in their body weight. Not too concerned about the numbers they're hitting. I know, those will come. Like if you're lifting weights, I mean, those will come. And then with strength, like strength phases, that can be tricky because from like beginning of the phase to the end of the phase, sometimes you'll see like rep PRs and stuff, but you really, I mean, I'm not testing like their maxes when they start and then testing again when they finish. I'm um, I'm just looking for them to progressively overload each week and then taking their numbers that they hit in that mesocycle and then going back to like their previous strength phase that they did maybe like 4 months ago and seeing if that went up or how much it went up. And then with peaks, um, I'm kind of looking based off the previous phase of the strength phase, making sure that those numbers are going up and also comparing, what they hit in that peak to like previous peaks or what they did if they're coming off a meet and they're preparing for another meet. The numbers they hit compared to what they did in that previous meet in the peak. So hypertrophy, I'm looking at body weight, and then strength phases and peaks, I'm looking at what they've done previously to make sure those numbers are still going up.
Okay. And how would you something that you said to me in my peaking phase, and something that I on my like your email that you sent me my program was no grinders, maybe mini grinders.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of maturity. That's tough
Oh, yeah.
sometimes to be like you're doing one rep, for example, I messed up in my peak. I went for a second rep when I shouldn't have. Um,
Hmm.
how do you know when to back off and adjust, and how you develop that skill to, because I think that sometimes chasing numbers, although it is important to see those numbers go up over time, obviously fatigue is going to be a confounding variable.
Yeah.
Which I am assuming is again why you're saying I'm looking mainly at body weight changes and hypertrophy, because fatigue is going to be up here relative to performance, because that's just how hypertrophy works. Fatigue is independent. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's an independent stimulus of hypertrophy, correct? With like
That's fine.
different metabolic byproducts and stuff.
Yeah.
So what was I saying?
When to back off in a peak.
Yeah. So like I guess how do you learn how to use your RPE and stick to it and develop that trust and lack of ego, especially in the gym when you're like, oh man, I want to hit this number, but it's just not there.
Yeah. It's tough, man. People set expectations of themselves and they get attached to numbers big time, specifically like that, 500, 600, 700, those like hard numbers that just take you to that next, 100. It's tough. Like, you, it takes a lot of maturity and, putting your ego aside. But, um, man, it's tough because even I had trouble with that too. But I mean, you just got to know that what you hit in training, I mean, really doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of people want to do it for the gram, but what you hit in the competition is what matters. And so the way I try to influence my athletes is just let them know that, lifts can be hard, but they're not your true one rep max. That's for the platform. You're training and you're preparing for that day. And so, you can like have that goal of like, all right, I want to hit, you know, 675 or 545, get the sexy plates, looking nice. But
With
it,
kilos, that doesn't happen.
yeah, yeah. If it's,
272.
yeah, you want all reds if it's kilo plates.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes you just gotta suck it up and you gotta load, 540 or you gotta load, 595. So I mean, that's tough, but I mean, I always tell them, don't be afraid to use the change plates, the little tiny little donuts, I like to call them. So it's tough, man. You just gotta suck it up and not go all out when it's time to lift heavy. Got to know what you're capable of.
Yeah, I think that's something that I am a shoot. He's one of the UK 83 kg guys. You know who I'm talking about? He's like been up there with Russell or he. He said something about Brett Gibbs.
Okay.
He said you should never like don't lift a weight that you haven't earned.
Yeah.
And I guess what that kind of means for me is if you come into a training session and like you are not there, you just don't have that for whatever reason, like backing off is okay because RPE and relative intensity is ultimately what counts and is going to lead to long-term progress because unfortunately and as much as we want with like everything like ideally if we were in like in these all like these perfect hyperbolic time chambers progress would just be super linear with like everything with body weight gain body weight loss with strength gain with muscle gain. Unfortunately it's just not like that.
Yeah.
And I think that learning how to play the long game is something that's super super important for anybody who wants to be really really amazing. And this is something that I've noticed with all the best athletes is they just have that long-term perspective and they understand that one training session isn't going to make me and
Yeah.
isn't going to break me. And what matters is, am I setting myself up for long-term progress? That week one of training, the RPE 6 or 7, it's going to feel relatively easy because it's supposed to feel that because you're setting yourself up for success.
Mhm.
Um, how would you go about if you had an athlete who was struggling with that long term perspective? Because that's something that a lot of novice powerlifters do struggle with, especially with comparing themselves to all these guys that are up here and they want to be up there so bad, and they feel like, oh, I gotta force my progress.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you gotta remind them that, that athlete that they look up to who's like just world class, they've been lifting weights since they were 7 years old. They've been playing the long game. They might be, like 22 and just insanely strong. Well, they've probably been lifting since they were like 7 years old, and plus, tons of other things. But, you know, it's tough to convince someone to, think long term and make that investment of just putting in work, every day for years and telling them, it will pay off in the end. It's hard to convince someone of that. But I mean, you want to keep their expectations realistic and just, you know, set small goals and make it's really like psychology. You want to set the small goals and make sure they achieve those goals, time and time again. From a coach's perspective, you got to be encouraging and rewarding. But man, this is like some sports psychology.
No, it's a tough question.
It's
Like
here, man.
it's something that I feel like it's like powerlifters just really deal with. Like anybody who has like a performance, like Olympic weightlifters, strongman powerlifters, it's really all about that because it's numbers. It's a numbers game. It's
Yeah,
a numbers sport. Usually, what I found is that as a coach, it's creating one trust with your client that the plan will work and that it will pan out. And that's why I think it's so important to not base your programming off of, well, this guy does this, therefore I'm going to do what that person did right now. Something that Chad, Wesley Smith, and Mike Israel said is you shouldn't have that mindset. You should think, what did they do to get to that point, and take the principles from that.
yeah,
So important would you say it is to follow an evidence-based program, one that's founded upon science and understanding principles of science, like
man,
exercise?
that's
Because
huge.
there's so many. Because you'll hear so many times, just lift weights, bro. Just come in and grind hard, brother. You'll get there. That works
Yep,
well as a beginner because anything works, but that doesn't work for long term.
yeah,
So what's the importance of having a coach and understanding training from a scientific perspective?
yeah. So science is the truth, man. it's something that's, been done time and time again. So there's, I don't want to say for certain it's going to work, but, you know, with a great degree of certainty, it's going to work. And so having a coach that knows, you know, the principles and the science and has, shown through clients, even through themselves, that they know what they're doing and how to take those concepts and implement them into individuals. I mean, it's super important, especially for when you get to like the intermediate and advanced stages where, smaller details matter much more. Whereas, with a beginner doing leg press versus belt squat, I mean, doesn't really matter. But when you get to an advanced level, like those things matter. So it's kind of knowing knowing and having trust in a coach that can make those decisions for you.
How would you go about choosing a coach and know that they are actually like legitimate? Because that's a big question a
Mhm.
lot of people do have, and I think that's totally valid. Like for example, I hired you because Jared said hire Jagger, and I said
I'll do whatever you
no
say.
problem.
Yeah. So choosing a coach, that can be tricky because a lot of times you want to pick the coach who's, coaching the best athletes, right? That can be a mistake because those the best athletes may not have had that coach on their come up, or they are just so like genetically gifted that they could literally do anything and just get even better. um I think choosing a coach that one has like a foundational, education is pretty important. And then also a coach that has brought people up from like down here and brought them up here. So I like seeing like when people say like they took this athlete and they added like over 2 years they added like 800 pounds to their total. That's freaking insane. Or like when they take an advanced athlete and they bring it like over a year they bring up their total by like 100 pounds. That's pretty dang good. So I think seeing like a coach's track record of what they've done to help other athletes, and then also what their education is. So talk the talk and walk the walk, really.
I think another underrated thing is sometimes a coach might be really good and they might have all those things, but if you just can't gel with them, if you don't have
Yeah,
a good vibe, there's no reason to work with that person.
totally,
To find somebody else.
totally.
And going off of what Jagger said, I had past powerlifting coaches, um, like one right before you, who he was a good coach, but I just did not gel with him. I just did not gel with him. I didn't make very great progress because I didn't trust him. I wasn't really enjoying my training because I didn't really. I felt like whenever I talked to him, it was like it would either be like this half-assed response or just like that sucked, do it again. Like, and I'm like, well, what do I fix? And
Yeah,
nothing. This was just like, just do it better. I'm like, okay, max Ada, but Max would actually like give you like,
yeah,
if he says like that was bad, it's because just do it better because you're advanced and you know what that means.
yeah,
Um, so looking around for, so basically look around for people that have really like actual legitimate qualifications, a baseline level of education, understanding of physiology and anatomy, and then what their track record is of how consistently they're able to deliver results.
yeah.
Because I think that you'll have some coaches that just have like their one magical unicorn,
Yep.
uh, and that's cool. But if you can have tons of athletes or tons of clients who achieve progress, that coach probably knows more or less what they're doing. Um, right. So we got that out of the way. Earlier, you were talking about testing, and how you said that it only really matters on the platform.
Yes.
that's a hard sell for a lot of guys. And I especially when I first came to you, I was in the camp of I feel really good today. I'm going to max and test because of the gram. And also, it's just a very objective way of measuring the most specific benchmarker of am I getting better as a power lifter? Is your one rep max going up? How often should you test a max as a power lifter? When would you decide to do that in training, if at all? And how would you best prepare for a max? And
Okay.
what's your opinion on I feel really good? I'm sorry. And what's your opinion on I feel really good today? So I'm going to go for it.
All right. So if you're a serious power lifter and you compete and you plan on competing multiple times, in a year or throughout um, your career, then you truly test your one rep max on the platform. That's not to say you don't, kind of push the limits in training, but you definitely save some in training and you put it all on the platform because that's really where it matters. When you're going for records, there's no gym records that, like, when people put in their bio, I just kind of chuckle at it. Their best lifts in the gym. It's like I don't really give a shit.
Yeah.
Don't care at all. I
And,
care what.
and, and anybody who has competed will know why we don't really give a shit.
Yeah, I only care what you did when you had to squat and bench before that insane
You got
deadlift.
to be there for like 4, 6, 8 hours.
Yeah, I want to know that you weighed in. I want to know that your meat day diet was strictly gummy worms. I want to know that there were
Oh,
three.
flashback.
I want to know that there were three judges
Really like
watching.
powerlifters just like snorting the gummy worms, like go for their
Dude,
bench press, thinking that's going to hit their bloodstream. Like it's all placebo, man.
that's all I would eat on a meat day is gummy worms
Great.
and caffeine pills.
Side note, it was so funny. I would like see like these powerlifters like slam like all these like high fat foods like at my meat. I was like, dog, a Rice Krispie treat. So much better for you. Like you, it's going to get your bloodstream anyways. That's a side tangent. We'll get to nutrition for powerlifters, but I knocked you off your train of thought. I apologize. I got excited about
Yeah.
gummy
So,
worms.
yeah. So testing Winter at Max meet day. If I think a time like when you would do what they like a mock meet, maybe like I guess when COVID strikes again and everything's a lockdown, competitions are canceled. You're already like super deep into a prep. You got like 2 weeks before the competition. I mean, I guess you can do that. I mean, you've already come that far just to like test, do a mock meet, have fun or whatever. But I mean, really, what happens on the platform is what matters. That's like the records. That's what gets written down and saved in an archive. Um, yeah. What else? What else were some of the questions about that?
I guess going so we've established if you're actually competing in powerlifting,
Mhm.
you only truly test your max on a meet day.
Yes.
Um, how often should you compete then? In that case, as a power lifter, for
Okay.
longevity in the sport, because something you'll see a lot is guys will start off and they'll compete just super frequently, and then they're just burnt out.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, if you're advanced, I think you should compete. More often. If you're a beginner, I think you should spend more time training and getting like stronger and more muscular. Whereas, an advanced person can compete, 4 or 5 times a year. And I mean, they're basically just doing strength, peak, which I mean is fine really for an advanced person who already has that
Yeah.
foundation of a muscular base and they want to stay in their weight class and they're fine with their body fat percentage and they're just really strong.
And I think that's something else going off of that too. A lot of people that don't understand when they hear peak or I'm prepping for a meet, they need to understand that, and this is still something that Chad does a really great job of articulating. When you're peaking, you're not getting any better. You're just expressing how much better you got when you were training. So when you decide to compete, you're basically saying, okay, I'm going to trade off me getting better so I can perform the best on this one day.
Yeah. Yeah. The way I kind of describe it is you just kind of get better, like more skilled at lifting maximal weight. You don't necessarily increase that maximal weight, but you just get more skilled at doing it because there is a difference when you're, I mean, squatting just a barbell and then squatting 800 pounds. Like it's different. It takes skill to have 800 pounds on your back and squat it. More than just strength, it takes skill to be able to walk that
Yeah.
out, balance, focus, and hit the lift. So, I mean, it's a skill too, beyond just brute strength. Huh? What?
Heavy single. Like would you ever program in a heavy single for
Yeah,
powerlifters?
I program heavy singles in peaking phases. I sometimes I like to kind of have some of my athletes as guinea pig. I'm not telling who, but sometimes I'll test out new things like programming a heavy single in like their strength phases. They're heavy single, then they back down and do their their volume work sets of fives, sixes, whatever. Um, I found, I mean, it's fun and sexy. It's more like an Instagram lift, but
Right.
I never really thought it to be um, advantageous. It's really just a fun
Plus,
thing
it's
to
really
do.
hard to, especially if you feel good, to stick to a sub-maximal single
Oh yeah,
because you're like, I could have something, and then you're going to go up and reach for it. I think that Jagger has done a really good job of saying there's a difference between training to be a good athlete and training to just be cool on Instagram.
yeah,
And if you're really interested in being an athlete and being the best that you possibly can, you're going to have that long term mindset. You're going to trust a program. You're probably going to have a coach who knows more than you, or at least is that guiding that compass. Lots of people will ask me, well, like, Adam, like you're decently smart and you seem to know what you're doing. Why do you have a coach? My answer to that is because I know my personality. Um, I need to be told what to do in order for me to do it by somebody else. Plus, I've always been an athlete, so I
yeah,
understand why coaching is important because you can do it on your own, but the art of self coaching is freaking tough, dude. Like Steffi Cohen doesn't program for herself. Russell Orhe doesn't program for himself. And these guys are all elite athletes who are smart and could do it, but they choose not to because having somebody there to be an objective viewpoint and objective data and say, like, I'm not going to give myself freaking walking lunges. I don't like walking lunges. Jagger's going to give me walking lunges because he's going to say it's going to make you better. Um, and that's something that a lot of guys need. They need that kick in the butt with coaching. So if you want to be the best athlete that you can, trust your process. Get help. Don't be ashamed with getting help when it is needed. Um,
yeah.
so I wanted to briefly touch on nutrition as a power lifter.
Mhm.
How would you recommend most powerlifters manage their nutrition in different phases of training? So, how should they eat in hypertrophy based on their goal, strength, peaking? Um, yeah, let's just go from there. That's pretty broad. We'll see where
Yeah.
it goes.
So I think like you follow just some simple, guidelines at first, and that's gonna go a long way. And probably like one of the most important is having protein with every meal. And then second, putting your carbohydrates around your training. Train in the morning, eat carbs in the morning time. Train at night, eat carbs in the nighttime. Um, you can still eat carbs throughout the day or whatever, but just kind of have that general guideline. and do with that what you will. But with hypertrophy phases, if your goal is to get more muscular, you got to eat more. So you got to make sure the scale weight is going up. And if it's not, you got to eat more. And if you are eating a lot, the scale weight is consistently staying the same, not going up enough, you got to eat more. I'm eating so much, like I just can't eat more. You got to eat more. If you're trying to lose weight, you got to eat less. If the scale weight is not going down, you got to eat less. Now it gets to a point where it's like I'm eating 300 calories. So, like, all right, well, let's just forget everything,
My
take
nervous
a
system
break.
doesn't work anymore.
Let's all right, just take a break. We'll take a week off of dieting, eat, enjoy your life, just relax. But um, you know, in strength phases, I say either
Sorry, Jagger.
maintain.
How much of a surplus and how much of a deficit would you recommend?
Depends. Generally, like if you're trying to, gain or lose pound a week, which is generally fine for most people, then about 500 calories different. But you got to know your maintenance, but general difference of 500 calories more or less, depending on your goals. That usually does the trick.
Mhm.
Um,
How important is food quality in that as a power lifter?
as a powerlifter, forget about it.
Got it.
Doesn't matter. You're lifting one rep. You're not running a marathon. You're just lifting one rep. I'd say it doesn't matter hardly at all. In fact, a little something I'll never forget is I was like one of my first powerlifting meets. I, like I try to bring like the best food possible, like the most healthy food and stuff. And then I see this like super jacked dude, all tatted up, bald head, beard, and like he's probably like 180 pounds or something, and he just finished squatting, probably like over 600. And I remember seeing him just like super yoked, wearing just the singlet bottom, so the straps are off, and he's just like holding a cheeseburger in one hand, and he's like eating that right before his bench. I just thought like, what the fuck is that thing? So, I mean, man, I wonder what that guy's
Maybe
up to
just
now.
eat, have some fruits and vegetables here and there, but like you're
Yeah,
not like, running a marathon.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Be flexible. Don't freak out about it.
yeah. I mean, if you want to lift until you're like 50, eat some vegetables too, some wheat bread and shit like that. I don't really fuck with that. I eat
Yeah,
pizza. Man.
I think that like obviously I'll because some people might like I think it's obviously important to eat for fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and whatnot. But
Yeah,
especially if you're like massing, if you're somebody like me who has a stomach that is that big, I have to eat like cereal and Reese's and stuff like that. And if I do want to go away and drink and drink milkshakes and stuff
yeah.
like that. Jagger asked me earlier this week, Adam, when was the last time you had a milkshake? And I was like, oh, three days ago. But like that's because Jagger knows that like I don't have any issue maintaining my body weight and or even losing. I don't think about it and I'll do that just because that's how my appetite is regulated. Um, so if you have to go and you do have to eat more of that shitty food, it's not a big deal. You're trying to get jacked. You're trying to
Yeah,
lift heavier weights.
yeah.
Like
And
you're not trying to like be like this. It's like a side note. If you want to be healthy, don't power lift. Don't power lift. Just
that's
don't
fucking
power lift.
true. That is
Like
true.
being being hyper caloric is actually not good for your health.
Yeah,
Like it's not like your blood markers will actually not be as good in a calorie surplus as they are around maintenance or in a deficit. So realize that your goal is not to be optimally healthy. Obviously, if you want to be able to live for a while, then like
yeah,
eat a vegetable,
yeah.
eat your fucking vegetables.
In fact,
But
like,
like yeah. Anyways, I think we beat that horse to death.
yeah,
Strength, uh,
yeah,
nutrition, because
yeah,
I've heard a lot of people when I say is I'll tell you what I usually recommend. And if you disagree with this, let me know. I always tell them we're going to eat at maintenance because we don't want our leverages changing, and because if you're in a surplus, you're going to be changing your body leverages, and maintenance calories are by definition enough to maintain your muscle and to have your nervous system fire, or maybe like a tiny calorie surplus, like maintenance to tiny calorie surplus, which to be honest, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I agree with that. But sometimes, when you gain weight, your leverages get better. And that's why like some really fat powerlifters are strong as shit. Like the guy's
Yeah,
super fat. How's he so strong? I mean, it's just how like having a thick waist like helps you squat more. I can't explain it. It just happens. That's why my squat sucks because my waist is so tiny. I don't know.
but you
But
squat mid 500s.
yeah, but someone who's 220 and compared to my other lifts, my squat always sucked. Anyways, now I'm mad about that. No. Um, yeah, so and I've also found that like the worse I eat, the stronger like the next session is. So like I just
Probably because
pig
it's
out.
sodium.
Yeah, I was like pig out on burgers or pizza and all kinds of shit, like donuts, and I just feel like the next session I just have unlimited strength, like I'm invincible. But that's probably placebo. Or it's just like the extra calories. They feel
Yeah,
good. The grease lubes up the joints. You just get moving. I don't know. Maybe. Um, but yeah, generally like
you're not
maintaining.
sponsored by McDonald's, but McDonald's is going to sponsor us. We would not say no,
Straight up, like chocolate shake from McDonald's, like you're gonna
dude.
add 20 pounds to next lift, whatever the lift is. You're gonna add
Guaranteed.
20 pounds. Yeah. But yeah, strength phases, maintaining your body weight serves that importance of just having like a maintenance phase, resensitizing your body and taking like a diet break if you've been dieting or if you've been gaining. Um, but yeah, I always tell them maintain or gain during strength phases if you're close to. But it also depends on like their body weight. If they're close to like preparing for a competition and they're already pretty um, overweight, then I would say you really want to try your best to maintain and stop gaining weight. Um, but yeah, maintain or gain.
So so basically, the main takeaways from that, if you're in a strength phase, how you basically need to determine how close am I to my weight class cap.
Yeah, totally.
Um, will I be stronger? Do I feel really strong at this current body weight with my current leverages? Is my training good? If you're checking off all those boxes, then maintain. If you feel like you could actually gain a little bit of more muscle with strength, because it's not like the volumes are too low. It's just that it's not going to be as optimal as like hypertrophy, but it's still good.
Yeah,
Especially with your programs, like your programs, like scary. But if you can benefit from a surplus, then so do gain weight, if you need to. Just needs analysis. And again, you're going to hear a lot of us say it depends because, and it's just because a lot of this will just depend upon the athlete, and that's where right coaching comes in. Um, cool. I had a few. We've been almost been on for an hour, so I'll
dang.
wrap it up. Um, guys, I can't believe. So I want to get through to two big questions, before we go. So deloads,
Yes, do them
why, how, when?
because your training should be so hard that you need a break, and you should do it a- when your training gets really hard, and after that you should do it. No, so depends on
I like to be abstract here.
depends on your training program. A lot of times, they start off easy and they get harder and harder and harder, and then you need to take it back a notch, rest the body, recover, and get ready to do it all over again. I found that to be the best for more beginners. They can spend more time doing hard training. For more advanced athletes and stronger, deload more frequently because those heavy loads and the volumes that you're able to do when you're advanced, they will take a toll on your body, so you'll need to deload more often. Um, yeah, and you know what? You should look forward to a deload. Deload should be a blessing. You should earn that deload. You should be looking forward to it. Sometimes when I'm making a program, I I'm kind of like looking like at the whole thing and having that deload be like their saving grace. So I want to like really just hurt them in that last week before the deload.
Yeah, I'm on a week 4 coming up, and I'm scared.
Yeah. So yeah.
I'm gonna
Sometimes
I'm already very sore and fatigued, and I'm gonna die. But
yeah.
I'll
You
I'll
you should be
deload.
able
I'll
to
come back
squeeze out.
tomorrow.
You should be able to squeeze out one more week, and then
Oh yeah,
you'll
I know.
do that. So
How often? So you said beginners can train for longer, intermediates a little less, advanced. If you're a beginner, how long should you train before taking a deload?
so if you're like picking up weights for like the first time, or you've been lifting for like less than 6 months, I'd say, I mean, damn near a year or two before you need a deload. Um, nah, just kidding, kind of. But maybe like 4 to 6 weeks of some good, structured, hard training that just gets harder each week. And then you'll need a deload after that. For more advanced athletes, more like 3 or 4 weeks of hard training and then a deload after that.
How would you structure a deload week? How harsh should it be? How long should it be for? Should you change exercises?
So I like the way I do it is about half 50% of the sets they did in that last week and about 70% of the weight they did. Now this is just like a hypertrophy or strength. I like to keep reps about the same. Sometimes I've heard of deloads, cutting the reps in half as well, which I mean is fine, but I feel like that's a little excessive, especially in strength phases, because then you're only doing like 2 or 3 reps for like 1 or 2 sets. And I just feel like it's just like you can do more and still recover just fine. The duration, about a week, is good. It's rarely longer, but sometimes maybe longer. Sometimes shorter for more novice athletes. I think you could probably get away with more like 5 day deload or so. Switching exercises, you can. Yeah, I feel like you totally could. You could swap out like barbell exercises for like something more easy, like with dumbbells, swapping dumbbells with machines, machines with cables. I mean, I feel like, yeah, you can totally like swap it out. No biggie. You want to still like kind of do like compound exercises though. So like, I guess if you want to swap out like a barbell deadlift with, deadlifting with dumbbells, like all right, yeah, sure, why not? You're still doing a hip hinge movement and bending at the knees as well. So I mean, checks out in my book. But if you're like swapping out like a barbell deadlift with like hamstring curls, it's like, well,
Yeah,
that's really not the same at all. So you want to keep it similar in that regard. But yeah, I feel like you can totally swap out exercise, and that won't be a problem. It's just deload anyway, so it's just active rest, recovery. Um,
yep.
shit, I mean, take a whole week off if you want. Not as good, but sure.
Yeah, I think that a lot of athletes will get anxious about taking deloads, or they'll think, "Crap, I have to deload. I'm gonna like get fat or like lose all my gains, or like I don't feel like I need to deload." If you're feeling any of those ways, especially the I don't feel like I need to deload, you need to train hard. Your training is not overloading enough. You have not induced enough of a stress to earn that deload. Like Jagger said, you earn your deloads and you train hard, and then you back off. Um, and a 1 week of training is going to help you. Plus, before you deload, you should have functionally overreached. Jagger, can you describe what functional overreaching is and why when you're deloading is? I'm sure that you've heard this, and I personally don't fully agree with it. I've heard deloading is taking 2 steps back for like 3 steps forward. or like 2 steps back for like 2 steps forward, whatever. Like I feel like it should really only be pushing you forward because of the functional overreaching effect. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you kind of get like what's called like super compensation. So you could look at it like maybe like a bow and arrow. So when you functionally overreach, you stretch that thing back super far. And then when you let it go, that's the deload, and you're able to make progress, right? So, like a functional overreaching phase is like a week long microcycle of structured training that's just super hard, and your body just can't recover within a week. You need like 2 weeks. And so you hit it hard and you dip down, and then you use that deload week to just skyrocket your recovery and adaptations. So when people say like they feel like they're not making any gains in the deload, well, if your training was structured well enough, it's quite the opposite. You're making the most gains during that deload. So, um, I mean, it all comes down to what you did prior to that deload. So
By
hopefully,
the end of your deload week, you should feel, oh man, like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to train. And but at the beginning, you should be like, I don't want to touch weights. I don't want to see weights. I don't want to hear weights. Hearing the word weights should freak you out.
yep.
Um, but no, that's all part of the process. So cool. I'm glad that we're on the same page about that, because don't get anxious about deloads. Realize they are part of the process. They'll make you better. If you fail to deload, you're digging yourself through basically a grave for making your progress harder. You, I think that the worst thing that can possibly happen is you don't take your deloads. You're so fatigued, then you're working harder for less progress. You don't want that. You want to make the best progress that you possibly can. And deloads are a way to make sure that you do that. Also, Jagger, how often should you train per week? How do you determine how a training free frequency and spreading out volume over a training week for an athlete?
Right. So the less experienced you are, the less frequently you need to train to make gains. But more is usually better, up to maybe like 6 days a week. So, like a novice, I mean, you can train twice a week, train on Monday, rest a few days, train again on Thursday or Friday. You could make some decent gains. Now, your split would have to be basically full body on each training session, and then if you're training like 6 days a week, you can do, chest day, back day, leg day, chest day, back day, leg day, split it up like that. Um, I think what's worked best for people is like 4 or 5 days a week training, especially with powerlifting. I mean, you definitely need time to recover, and you really don't need to train every day, twice a day. I mean, you just don't. I mean, a lot of people will like over glorify powerlifting and to be like this insane sport that requires like immense mental focus, and like you need to dedicate your life to this shit. When really, I mean, 4 or 5 days a week, 1 to 2 hours a day, a really great power lifter. So, I mean,
Doesn't Marisa Inda? She just trains 4 days a week.
yeah, she's one of the best.
Yeah, perfect example. Um, that's something that concerns me sometimes when I get clients who are so set on a 6 day a week split, especially when I'm like writing custom programs. And it's like I get the intake form, I have to do it for them. If they're like, I want to train 6 days a week, and they're like a novice, I'm like, okay.
It's like, all right.
I'm like, okay, cool. So, or like in like a strength phase, like with Jagger's saying about like the 4 to 5 days, I found that super, super important, because like really you honestly only need 4 days. Like I genuinely believe that you only need 4 days as a powerlifter to get stronger. Because if I'm programming in something for 5, 6 days a week, those 2 days are like accessory days, like light fluffy arm work, like feel like get a pump, feel like a bodybuilder, you know. which like go and have some fun with your friends, which is totally fine. But I think the best analogy that I can give or say is don't train just for the sake of training. Train for the sake of getting better and for getting stronger, and realize that more training is good up to a point. But then if you're doing too much, you're just working too hard for not enough in return.
I agree.
Um, how frequently should you train each lift per week in a strength phase versus peak versus hypertrophy?
Yeah, most
For squat,
people.
bench, and deadlift.
Yeah, most people squatting twice a week, benching twice a week, and deadlifting twice a week is good. So it'd be like one session is heavy, and the other session is light to moderate. Now, if you're doing a peak, it's a little different. I like to up it to 3 times a week on each exercise, because it's more practice with um, the lift, dialing technique, and those can be heavy, moderate, light days. Um, and so, what else is there? There's something else I wanted to say, but I forgot. Oh yeah, so if like a novice athlete, they can bench. I mean, 3, maybe even 4 times a week, just because it's a smaller muscle group for them. They can recover like the next day, so they can bench more frequently. Squat usually 2, sometimes 3 times a week. Deadlift almost always twice a week. Just depends on how strong they are. Um, yeah, those major muscle groups are going to need a longer time to recover, so you need to kind of decrease the frequency. But like benching, 3 times a week. I've done 3 times a week in like hypertrophy and strength, and I felt that was okay. And that was when I was pretty intermediate. So,
Hmm.
um, I mean, it depends on the person too. How well they recover from training as well. If you want to
Yeah,
squat every
some
day,
people will take
like
a lot of damage from certain lifts, and other people will not. I'm a weird one where I can just like I honestly don't feel as messed up from deadlifts as I do from squat.
yeah,
I do squats and like I can just do like 5 sets of squat. I see that and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die here. Whereas like deadlift, it's like I can do like 5 sets. I'm like, okay, I feel fine. So a
yep,
lot of this is going to have to do with leverages, with fiber type. Basically, the more and like obviously like how stressed out you are outside of the gym, how much sleep that you're getting. More stressors outside of the gym. Obviously, lower volumes that you can actually recover and benefit from. Um, with leverages, if you have better leverages for one lift, you can probably get away with doing a little bit more volume.
yeah,
If you have worse leverages for one lift, you should probably do a little bit less or alter to that technique via stance differences to make it a better lift for you. And that's actually a good segue for the last question that I wanted to ask, which is should you squat high bar or low bar? Or should you deadlift conventional or sumo? How would you go about assessing that? If you had an athlete come to you who said, Jagger, I don't know what I should be doing. What should I do? Are there any things that you look for on like their skeleton or like how their body seems to compensate at heavy loads?
mhm.
Um, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you should do both. There's a time and place, but I think you should be doing both. They're both great exercises and variations. Now, with powerlifters in mind, you compete and do the exercise that is your strongest. The name of the game is lift the most weight, do the exercise that is the strongest. Now, most of the time, I think when you're training, the high bar squat carries over the best to a low bar, opposed to a low bar carrying over to a high bar squat. And a conventional deadlift carries over more to a sumo deadlift than a sumo deadlift carries over to conventional. So a lot of the time you're going to be doing the one that you're weaker at. Now, what I'm looking for as far as like a deadlifter, if for sumo, if they can open up their hips a lot and open up their legs and keep them open and move up and down, I think they have the potential to be in like a world class sumo deadlifter. Um, and with conventional, if they got short femurs, I think they can be and like super long arms. I think they could be a really cool looking conventional deadlifter. Now, if they're about equal, you definitely want to do conventional because it looks cooler and it's just so much more
So
respected.
much cooler.
It just looks cooler.
I
And you
every
get
single time that I come in, I do my sumo, and I like spread out my legs. I'm like, oh, geez, people are probably looking at like, oh, what's this kid doing? Like,
yeah,
whereas like me with like conventional, I'm like, I'm pick up weights, men
yeah,
strong. Whereas
yeah,
like small, I'm like technique,
yeah,
technique,
yeah,
prowess.
yeah, yeah. And then with squats, it's kind of the same thing, but with um, low bar, I feel like there's a more like a higher potential ceiling with your absolute strength. Most people are stronger when they squat low bar just because the leverages are just better and you use more major muscle groups than high bar. High bar is just all quads. And I mean, it's great for building the quad and building a great squat, but like low bar, you're going to use your glutes more and your back more and your quads. So you're just using so many more muscles, and I feel like there's so much more potential to get stronger. It's probably going to trigger a lot of weightlifters because they just strictly squat high bar, but that's more focused for their sport. But um, yeah, I mean, you should be doing both, but you should be competing with whichever one's stronger. If you're stronger with high bar, yeah, I mean, do your competition with high bar, but definitely think about and consider building up your low bar squat because your max ceiling for a high bar squat might be 500 pounds, but your low bar might be 550 once you build it and dial in technique and all that. So something to think about, but I mean, you should do both.
Yeah. So basically, training with both stances, probably train the weaker stance a little bit more frequently than your strong stance, to improve those weaker muscle groups because that's why it's weaker. And then once you get closer to competition, you should probably train whatever competition stance you're strongest with more frequently. And ultimately, the coach can make recommendations, but you have to determine for yourself what feels best and what you can progress most consistently with.
Yeah.
Um, I can say that for myself, I'm strong with both conventional and with sumo. Um, and if you look at me, I'm kind of weird. Where like it looks like it doesn't look like I should be like strong at sumo or like as strong at like conventional as I really am. It's like I could really choose whatever stance that I do want. The reason why I choose sumo is just because I can get in a better position with heavy weights.
Yeah.
Um, And with high bar versus low bar, first off, I haven't really trained low bar, like really ever. But I know for myself, looking at how I compensate with heavy loads, especially with high bar, and just how much stronger that my back is relative to my quads. Like, in my meet, I hit 424 because my quads were just too weak. They just give out. They did gave out when I tried to go for 435. Whereas I think that if I learned the technique for low bar, I would have been able to probably get fourth, third, 35 pretty well. Um, and I know a lot of people want to hear like there's this magical answer of like this is what you should do and this is why. Um, well, use what Jagger said about femur length, arms, stuff like that. How strong your outs of muscle groups are to make an informed potential decision, but don't be afraid to be like, okay, well, this actually feels better for me, and I can get a better position and make better progress with. Because I think that's something a lot of people don't pay enough attention to is what can you progress with best?
Yeah.
Because you might be like, oh, this feels good too. If like it's like let's say both stances feel great. You're weird. You like high bar just as much as you like low bar. You like sumo just as much as you like conventional. You should probably choose which one you can progress best with. And that's why Jagger's saying always train both of them, is what I'm assuming.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Last good question. Is sumo cheating?
No, it's not cheating.
There we
Alright,
go.
I said it, it's not
That's
cheating.
it. It's not
Nah,
cheating.
you know what?
Uh,
Maybe I'm biased because my best deadlifts have been sumo. That's probably I'm biased.
that's probably it.
That's probably
All right. Well, I think that's we talked about lots of good stuff. Um, I wanted to thank Jagger for his time.
it.
If you guys are interested in, are you taking clients right now?
Only if they're serious and they have some experience. Yeah.
Cool. So if you are decently jacked, decently strong, you know what you're doing. Reach out to Jagger for coaching. I'll have your social media and Instagram. Shoot him a DM or which one works best? DM or email?
DM is just fine.
DM him. See about his coaching. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and catch you later.
See ya.